It's been called Pokemon with Guns, Ark Survival Evolved, but with Pokemon, and many other names. But what game do we speak of? Hello and welcome back to LBG Reviews. Today we'll be talking about Palworld. But before we dive into that, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you've done anything with gaming within the past few weeks, you have most certainly heard of Palworld. It's that game that blew up, both because of the concept and also because of people convinced that Nintendo would sue them. But what does your local legally blind gamer reviews guy think of it? Before we talk about that, I think it's important to note that I'm playing the game on an Xbox One, not an Xbox Series X, not an Xbox Series S, no. The Xbox One. So as a result, not only will my frame rate be slightly worse than everyone else's just due to older hardware, because my Xbox is on the older side of things. I got mine about a year or so after it came out, so it's definitely been through the ringer. And add to that, we also all know about how Palworld on Xbox is behind on updates compared to PC, so if you notice something that your favorite streamer does in Palworld that I haven't done yet, one, it's likely because this footage was recorded when I was still fairly early into the game, and two, it might be because I'm playing on Xbox, they're playing on PC. So given the fact that Palworld is in early access essentially, it's important to note that when talking about the game's accessibility features, at least in my own experience playing the game, it doesn't really have that many accessibility features. There's volume controls, there's sensitivity controls, but as far as I can recall, and please keep in mind that it's been a few weeks since I've played the game, that Palworld doesn't really have any accessibility features, although I do think that it could use a bunch. And so for the most part, although my channel may mostly talk about accessibility features, today it's going to be less focused on accessibility features and more focused on just general issues I experienced while playing Palworld, and my overall experiences, of course. So in Palworld, you start off waking up to seeing a Chickapee, a Lamball, and a Cativa looking over your unconscious body. As they see that you wake up, they run off and you sit up and you see a malfunctioning tablet basically telling you to seek out the towers, that the tree holds the truth, and then it promptly dies. From there, you get given the game's basic tutorial about moving around, using the camera, gathering resources, catching pals and pal spheres, and since it's a survival crafting game, there's a lot of crafting that you gotta do. However, my first major point of issue with Palworld comes from after you've caught your first pal. See, when you catch a pal and you go to the party tab, or I think it's like the pals tab, I can't remember exactly, but basically when you view what pals are currently on your team, the game lags for a solid second or so before it finally comes back. And then likewise, it does so as well when you use the PAL deck, which is this game's equivalent to a Pokedex. Beyond that, the only other major thing that I noticed with the game was that the prompt letting you know that you could press a certain button to be able to cancel throwing a PAL sphere was still in Japanese, which is not surprising considering that the game was developed by a Japanese company, but also the game is still in early access, so since it's a Japanese company, not everything will have been localized just yet. So what is the objective in Palworld? Well, your objective is to catch pals and train them up and use them to help you fight through various towers to essentially defeat the game's various bosses. But beyond that, the game's story really doesn't have much else depth to it right now, but gameplay-wise, your objective is also to build out a massive factory. When you set a pal to work in your base, you can have it farming crops, you can have it cooking food if it's a fire type, you can have it using other various bits of machinery, like there are various working skills that you have to be aware of when putting a pal into work. And this brings us to the next point of issue that a lot of people have with the game, at least initially, is it's essentially slave labor simulator. See, not only do your pals work for you, your pals also have a sanity level that you have to maintain to keep them working at the best efficiency. You can build them hot springs and other things to help improve their sanity. You can make them better meals to improve their sanity. Or you can also use various medicines and drugs that you can craft yourself to be able to get your pals to get back to work. In my own experience playing Palworld, especially as I leveled up further, I definitely developed like a dictatorship-esque kind of chokehold over my pals, where it's like, you've been taking like 5 hours out of the day to go hang out in the hot spring. I'm gonna pull you out of the workforce, put someone else in your place, and take you out of the base's range and butcher you. Now, another thing about Palworld is that Palworld is a game that's built with multiplayer in mind, but you can easily do it all in single player, which is one thing that I think that it has an upper hand against, like, say, Ark Survival Evolved, which is a game that even the game's company's CEO mentions that their game is very similar to. In Ark Survival Evolved, although the game is built around multiplayer, and yes, you can play it in single player, you can't obtain all of the blueprints in single player without going through a bunch of hoops in order to try to get to stuff that you didn't have access to before. Now, granted, in Ark, there are some things that are not useful in single player because they mostly are used against other players in multiplayer. At the same time, being able to get everything is still really nice. I will also say that Palworld's base management system is really cool because it kind of guides you through the basics of what your pals need to work at their best to a certain degree until there becomes a lot more freedom in what you unlock yourself. Now, it's hard to talk about Palworld without talking about the controversy surrounding people trying to get Nintendo to sue the people who made Palworld, or to get them to take action against them, I should say. Do I think that there is grounds for that? So I've looked at a lot of the evidence that people have been circulating online about why Palworld is not safe from the ire of the Pokemon Company. And yeah, there are a few things where I can see where they're coming from. Like, there are a few models that have shockingly and suspiciously similar models, and that if it's simply a coincidence, that's highly unlikely, and that is shocking. But beyond that, I don't see that there's much grounds for Nintendo to take action against Palworld. Why is that? Well, let's look at the two intellectual properties here. Pokemon is extremely family friendly. I mean, although the Pokedex entries tend to show otherwise, with describing like how Drifloon will take away children and kidnap them, or like how Alakazam, or Abra I should say, is literally just a boy who woke up one day as a Pokemon. Like, Pokemon may have some disturbing descriptions, but Palworld lets you experience some of the more disturbing aspects and some of the more dangerous aspects of living on a place with magical creatures. Likewise, Nintendo would never let you put a gun in Pikachu's hands. And so, like, there's a lot that distinguishes them between each other that, although yeah, there might be some grounds for getting them to change a few 3D models, I don't see there being a future where Palworld gets completely taken offline because of the Pokemon Company. But with that out of the way, that's all I've got to say about Palworld. See you guys next week when we talk about Cult of the Lamb. A few weeks back I was getting really into Cult of the Lamb and the Sins of the Flesh update. I look forward to sharing that stuff with you guys. See you guys next week.